the life cycle of a frog. So we'll be moving on from the life cycle of just animals in general and taking a close look at the life cycle of a frog from when it's born to when it's young like this, and then an adult frog. But first, let's have a look at the key words we'll be using today. Here we go! Let's have a look at the key words we'll be using today. All right, up first, we have two pictures of a baby salamander. Now, as we talked about in Unit 17, a salamander is an amphibian. And an amphibian lives both on land and in water in its life. In order to live in water, it needs gills. These little spiky things here we see are gills. It helps breathe underwater. Without the gills, the salamander couldn't live underwater. Now, a baby frog doesn't have gills like this. It has very flat gills on its sides. When a salamander grows up, it starts to develop these little blue things we see here. Those things are lungs. Lungs are the organ, it's the part of the body that helps us breathe air. We have lungs too. That's how we breathe. Okay, let's look at our example sentence. An amphibian has both gills and lungs in its lifetime. Yes, so sometimes they don't have it throughout their lives and they eventually lose their gills. All right, let's move right along here. Here, let's first look at the left. Okay, here we have a man, a red man, amongst all these blue people. He's the only one. And on the right, we have a golden piggy bank. And all around it are pink piggy banks. Now, this red person and this gold piggy bank, well, they are unique. To be unique means to be different and special, to be peculiar, to be the only one amongst all these other different things. Let's look at our example sentence. She bought a unique gold piggy bank yesterday. So it was very unique, one of a kind. All right, let's move right along here. Here we have a little diagram going on, don't we? So we have our frog on the left. The frog lays eggs like this. What does lay eggs mean? Well, if you can recall, birds lay eggs too, right? Lay eggs simply means to deposit eggs, or it's the time when the eggs come out of the frog or bird and are set there. Eventually, the eggs hatch. These eggs hatch into baby frogs. Hatch means to be born from an egg, or it means to come out from the egg. Okay, let's look at our example sentence. The frog laid eggs and they hatched into tadpoles. Tadpoles, what are these? Oh, well, let's move on and find out. Oh, here we have a picture of some tadpoles. Tadpoles are young frogs or baby frogs. As we can see here, they all have tails. The tails are the long parts on the back of these frogs here that help them swim underwater. Over time, the frogs lose their tails and develop or grow legs. So develop here means grow. Grow legs, grow bigger. Okay? Let's look at our example sentence. Tadpoles have tails, but over time, they develop legs. Yes, maybe you can see right here, this one's starting to grow some of its legs. All right, let's move right along here. Ooh, here we have very different pictures, huh? These aren't of frogs, but of fathers and their sons, right? Well, the sons resemble their fathers. Resemble means to look like. So this son resembles his father, and this son resembles his father. They look like their fathers, okay? Let's look at our example sentence. The boys resemble their fathers. Yes, they look very much like them. Okay, we finished up with the key words. Now, let's read. Let's read the life cycle of a frog. Frogs are amphibians, so their life cycles are different from mammals. In fact, frogs have very unique life cycles. Frogs lay eggs in water in spring. After about 2 weeks, tadpoles hatch from the eggs. Tadpoles actually do not resemble frogs at all. They do not have any legs, but have tails. Tadpoles also have gills. Their gills let them breathe and live in the water. As tadpoles grow older, they get ready to live on land. They develop legs, and their tails become shorter. Also, they develop lungs, which let them breathe air on land. Then, the tadpoles start to look more like frogs. After about 14 weeks, the frogs have become adults and have no tails. They move onto land and live there most of their lives. All right, everyone. Great job reading the passage. Now, let's take a closer look at it, shall we? Okay, so up first, frogs are amphibians. They are one kind of an amphibian. And because frogs are amphibians, their life cycles, how they are born, how they get older, how they age, all of that is different from mammals. In fact, in truth, frogs are very unique. They have very unique life cycles. Very different and special life cycles, very different, right, from the mammals. Okay, so first up, in the beginning, with birth, frogs lay eggs. Where? In water. They lay them in the water in springtime. After about 2 weeks, after they lay eggs, after 2 weeks after they lay eggs, tadpoles start to hatch, right? They start to hatch or come out of the eggs. Tadpoles actually do not resemble or look like frogs at all. Why not? How are frogs and tadpoles different? Well, first up, tadpoles don't have any legs. But instead of legs, they have tails, which help them swim in the water, right? Tadpoles also have gills. What do gills do? Well, one thing the gills do is it lets them breathe in the water. Another thing this lets them do is it also lets them live in the water. Okay, so the gills let them do 2 things here. What does lets here mean? Well, lets here means sort of enables to. It gives them the ability. Without these gills, they would not be able to, okay? So it enables or gives them the opportunity. Okay, as tadpoles grow older, as they get older, they get ready to, or they prepare to live on land. What's the first thing they start to do? Well, they start to develop or grow legs. While their legs develop, their tails also become shorter, right? They get shorter and shorter. Besides developing legs, they develop lungs, which they need in order to breathe air on land. Then, after these things, start to take place, then the tadpoles start to look more like frogs, or they start to slowly resemble frogs. After about 14 weeks, so after about 14 weeks now, the frogs are adults and completely have lost their tails. No tails left on the frogs. When this happens, they move onto land. They move from the water to life on their land, and they live most of their lives on land. So the rest of their lives is spent mostly living on land. All right, everyone, great job going over the passage. Now, if you need to, take some time, go back and review, and when you're ready, let's move on to the wrap-up. Are you ready? Great, then let's get started with the wrap-up. First, main idea and details. Number 1, what is the main idea of the passage? Is it A baby frog is called a tadpole, B, frogs can live in the water and on land, or C, the life cycle of a frog is unique? Now, which of these three is the answer? Well, it is C, the life cycle of a frog is unique. Yes, it is unique because it is born in an egg in the water and then eventually grows up to live both on land and in water. Okay, now for number 2. How can tadpoles breathe in the water? What's the answer here? Is it A, they have lungs, B, they have gills, or C, they have tails? What's the answer here? Well, it is B, they have gills. Yes, gills are the part of the body that allows or lets the tadpoles breathe in the water. Okay, now let's move on to number 3. What does develop mean? Does it mean A, lose, B, grow, or C, breathe? Develop in this passage meant B, grow. Yes, and when the tadpole started to develop legs, it moved from living only in the water to living both on land and in the water. Okay, now for number 4. According to the passage, which statement is true? Is it A, tadpoles have both gills and lungs, B, tadpoles look like frogs, or C, frogs are fully grown up after 14 weeks? What's the answer here? The answer is C, frogs are fully grown up after 14 weeks. Yes, it takes them a long time to fully develop after they hatch from their eggs. All right, now let's check out number 5 and complete the outline together. Okay, so we mainly looked at frogs, and under frogs, we looked at 2 different stages in their life cycle: tadpoles and adult frogs. First up, tadpoles. Now, tadpoles, they hatch from eggs. They also have a blank, but no legs. They have a what? What goes in the blank here? Well, the answer is tail. Yes, they have a tail. The tail allows them to swim in the water. Tadpoles also have gills, so they can breathe in water. Also, they develop blank and lungs. What do they develop besides lungs? They also develop legs. Yes, they develop legs, and these are what they use as an adult frog. All right, now let's look at adult frogs. Adult frogs, well, they become adults after 14 weeks. They have no tails. Yes, they lose their tails. They have legs and blank. What goes in the blank here? I'll give you a hint. connects over to the last part of the tadpoles, right? So the answer here is lungs. Yes, they have legs and lungs so they can live on land. All right, great job. Now let's move right along over to the vocabulary builder and put the correct word in each blank. So first up, number 1, a young frog. What's a young frog called? Well, it's usually called tadpole. Yes, the tadpole is the young or the baby frog that develops into the adult frog. All right, now for number 2, to be born from an egg. To be born from an egg or to come out of the egg. What do we call that? Same thing that birds do with eggs, right? That's why we have the picture of birds here. The answer is hatch. Yes, and after a while the tadpoles hatch from the eggs and then over weeks develop into adult frogs. All right, now for number 3, to look like something or someone. To look similar like someone, to look like someone. What's the answer here? It is resemble. Yes, and when tadpoles are first hatched from their eggs, they do not resemble frogs. But over time, they start to look more and more like frogs. All right, now for number 4, a pair of body parts used for breathing air. Yes, this is the body parts that the adult frog has. What's the answer here? It is lungs. Yes, the adult frog usually has 2 lungs to help it breathe air. All right, now let's check out the vocab bonus. First up, number 1. What lets frogs breathe air on land? Is it A, gills, B, tails, C, lungs, or D, tadpoles? What's the answer here? Well, it is C, lungs. Yes, lungs are very, very important for the frogs. If they didn't have lungs, they wouldn't be able to live on land. Now, gills are similar to lungs, but gills are what the frogs use to breathe underwater. Okay? Now let's move on to number 2. What does an adult frog not have? What's the answer here? Is it A, lungs, B, legs, or C, a tail? The answer? Well, it is C, a tail. Yes, when the tadpole starts to develop its legs, it also starts to lose its tail. And so an adult frog doesn't have a tail at all. All right, everyone, great job with the wrap up and the reading today. Very, very proud of you. Now, as always, try to think of a way you can use and practice your vocab. Maybe you can tell a friend or family member about the life cycle of a frog. Or maybe you can write a little story about a frog. I don't know, have some fun with it. And remember, we need to practice hard and practice often, right? I'll see you next time. So long.